Well, hey, everybody, I just got back from seeing Father Stu, and I wanted to share my thoughts on this movie. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, what do you say, Keith? Are we supposed to go to see this movie, or should we avoid it? I know people are making videos like that, talking about that. Some are saying you should totally go see this movie. It's amazing. Others are saying, don't go see it. It's got bad words in it, and it's disrespectful to our faith and to our Lord. Keith, what do you say? Well, I'm going to share my thoughts with you, but I will tell you this. I'm not going to tell you whether or not you should see this movie or not. That's up to you. And I am going to spoil some things that happen in the movie. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to know what happens, don't watch this video. But more than anything, I just kind of want to share my perspective on it and then let you decide what that means to you. So I will say this. You have to understand what this movie is. And when you look at this movie, I was comparing it to two other types of movies, okay? The first is just like your regular movie that you go see to be entertained. Movies today are fast-paced. They have things in them that grab you, and they're designed to appeal to our short attention spans, and they're spectacular. Father Stu is not like that. Father Stu is not a movie that has all of this stuff that has been dreamed up by authors and producers and creators that, you know, they can, when you're making a movie about whatever you want, you can create all kinds of drama and things. This is a true story about a man's life. And don't get me wrong, there are some dramatic elements that happen. There are some exciting things that happen. And there are, you know, lots of things that when you watch the movie, you're gripped by. But it isn't the kind of movie that people are used to when they go see movies that are, you know, script writers and producers have crafted this incredibly complex and crazy story. Okay. So it's not a regular movie. What the other type of movie this isn't is a quote unquote Christian movie that is designed to show Christians what they already believe. Okay. A lot of the movies from like the 90s and the early 2000s that we grew up with sort of in the church youth group culture in the evangelical world that were the Christian movies were let's just face it, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but they were sanitized and they were very cultivated and they were designed to tell a specific version of Christianity to people who already believe that. And, you know, I thought it was funny. Like people were always like, oh, you could take your friends to go see this, you know, these Christian movies or whatever. It'll convert them. It probably did somebody, but most of the non-believers that I saw going to some of these movies from the past were always like, that was just a bad movie. This isn't trying to do that. You see, and I think this is where some people get tripped up with Father Stu is some people they think that a Christian movie has to basically stay within certain boundaries for it to be, you know, Christian enough or whatever enough. Father Stu doesn't try to do that. And I'm thankful for that because here's the thing. This is a movie that's about a man's life and it's a true story. I felt like I was sort of getting a visual of someone giving a testimony, which I thought was interesting and powerful. And here's what I love about this movie and what I wish more movies were able to do. I loved that in the movie, the faith is presented as a good and beautiful and difficult thing. And that's something that we don't get enough of in movies these days. And maybe we don't really need that, but I kind of think that that's something that is underdone. Because like I said, you either have in popular movies today, either the Christians, especially the Catholics, are like the worst people that you will ever encounter. And, you know, they're always like underhanded and phony and whatever. Or the idea of the Christian faith is so like sanitized and filtered that you feel like if you just do the right things, everything's always going to work out in your life. You're going to get the girl, you're going to win the game, your marriage is going to work out, your business is going to grow. I mean, whatever. And that's just not reality. Father Stu is a true story. So it's not trying to give you a message. It's trying to tell you a story, which I think is even more effective when it comes to giving you a message. But that's something that you have to allow to happen in your mind. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They either want to, they're used to it being like the faith is fake and bad, or it's like so good that, you know, it's not realistic. And when I say good, I mean from a worldly perspective, because remember, the world's version of the faith is either that it's the worst thing ever, or that if you do what you're supposed to, everything good will happen in this life and you'll have, you know, everything will be great. Father Stu isn't like that. Now, I can tell you this, what I loved about it was the fact that in the telling of this story, I mean, the redemption and all that stuff and his change and how the grace of God came to him, I thought was beautiful and inspiring. I was prepared for that. Because, you know, I'd heard people say that, but what I really was moved by more than anything was the message of how Father Stu's suffering was the moment where he found God in his purpose. I felt like this was a movie about a man searching for his ultimate purpose. And, you know, the whole time you're thinking, oh, he found God, he's going to be a priest, that's his purpose. Well, sort of, yes. But ultimately, deeper than that was he finds his purpose in understanding how the love of God comes to us in suffering. That is a message I've never seen done in a movie about the faith. Never. And this did that beautifully. And the reason why it did it beautifully was because this was actually what happened. This was a true story. This wasn't dreamed up by some Hollywood producers that were trying to put a point across. And that's why I think it was so awesome, because there was something about this man's life that was so compelling, and his story that was so compelling that in the end, I mean, he dies. And, you know, you expect this guy's going to have this ministry that, you know, if this was a movie written by script writers, he would have had this big thing or whatever, like this lifelong ministry or whatever. But he struggles, and it's in the midst of that struggling that he draws nearer to the Lord, and he shares that in his sermon at the end. I thought was powerful. So I took my kids to see this with my wife and I, two of them anyway, for Mother's Day. And my two kids that went aren't Catholic. I'm glad I took them to see it. I'm glad they got to see what I thought was a beautiful picture of the Catholic faith. It didn't try to make it seem perfect. There were elements about his situation with the church that made us like uncomfortable, and that made us think, oh, why are these guys doing this? But it's reality, and the greater message of the beauty of the faith, I think personally, my opinion was that's what showed through. And I want my kids to see that. I know if I take them to see some goofy, you know, overproduced Catholic movie where whatever this and whatever that, and it's all sent, they're going to look at that and they're going to go, okay, Dad, thanks a lot. That was great. And if I take them to see 99 out of 100 movies that have Catholics in it in the real world, the Catholic Church is going to look horrible, because that seems to be the agenda the world wants to have when it comes to our faith. Or they're going to turn it into, like, you know, Christian soup for the chicken soul or something like that, you know, and there'll be these little platitudes and these little goofy sayings that don't seem to impact their lives. I'm glad I took them to this, because I felt like this showed them a real picture of a man's life who was all out for himself, and the relentless grace of God pursued him. And once the grace of God took hold of him, he wasn't going to let go. And I think there are so many people in the world that have had faith, but then they've let it go. And I felt like the overall message of this movie was that God reaches out to us, but at the same time, it's really brilliant in the way that it doesn't let us off the hook. You know, we have to do our part. We have to cooperate with what God's trying to do in our lives. And I feel like that's a beautiful message. And when we do, it doesn't mean things in the world are going to go the way that we want them to, but we're not made for this world. And there was a line in this movie that I thought was so brilliant when Father Stu says, we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We are spirits having a human experience. And that I thought was like that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard said. I appreciated that. I don't know if Father Stu actually ever said that. I'm sure there's some Hollywood in here, but regardless, that was a powerful message, along with that you find God's love in a closer way in the midst of suffering. So many important things. I think I'll probably, when it comes out or whatever on DVD, I don't mean, do we have DVDs anymore? I'll watch it again. And I think I'll pull even more things out of it. But all in all, I would say this: I really liked it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to like it. I wasn't scandalized by the language. I was prepared for that. And, again, this is a reality. But that's not to say that you won't be scandalized. So you do what you want. It's rated R. I mean, it's not like you expected to walk in there and find VeggieTales and then you got, F-bombs. So you know what you're getting into. But all in all, I thought it was an incredible visual testimony of what the power of God can do in anybody. Some really incredible things that were part of this. So again, this is just my opinion. I'm not a movie critic. I'm not someone that you necessarily need to listen to. I just wanted to share my thoughts with you on what I thought of Father Stu. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Take care and God bless.